The second to last escape from Alcatraz is probably one of the most famous and intricate prison escapes of all time that has left us with many unanswered questions. The main one being, did anyone successfully escape the rock and make it to freedom? First, let's talk about Alcatraz. Alcatraz was a maximum security federal penitentiary built on Alcatraz Island, just off the coast of San Francisco, California. The building had previously been used as a United States military prison, but in 1933, the building and surrounding land was acquired by the United States Department of Justice, and after some modernization, it met the requirements to be a top-of-the-range security prison. Thick walls, 23 hours of confinement for inmates, random shakedowns, up to 14 cell counts a day, and 1 guard for every 3 inmates, one of the highest ratios around. The building was solid, and the inmates were led to believe that even if they did somehow manage to escape the prison, due to the icy shark-filled water and strong San Francisco Bay currents that surrounded the rock, they wouldn't get very far. So you can see why everyone thought it was escape-proof, and why it gained the reputation as being America's toughest prison, housing some of the country's most notorious offenders and escape artists. But this didn't stop people from trying to break free. During its 29 years of prison use, a total of 14 escape attempts were made, involving 36 prisoners. 23 of them were recaptured, 6 were shot and killed, 2 drowned, and 5 are still listed as missing but presumed dead. Of the 14 escape attempts, only 1 of them was potentially successful, and that is the case that we are all most likely familiar with. It began on June the 11th, 1962, when Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin escaped from Alcatraz. Although none of them were murderers, they all had a history of armed robbery and drug dealing, and were sent to Alcatraz due to their numerous escape attempts from other prisons. Whilst at Alcatraz, the 3 men quickly became friends along with another inmate called Alan West, and all 4 of them hatched an audacious plan to escape the so-called inescapable prison. The 4 men began planning their escape in December 1961 and started collecting materials and tools for the job, such as discarded saw blades and cutlery, and over the course of 6 months, the 4 men slowly chipped away at the ventilation duct in their cells into the utility shaft using blades, spoons, and an improvised drill they made from a broken vacuum cleaner motor. They did most of this during the 1 hour of music practice for all the inmates, which gave the men the perfect chance for their chipping to go unnoticed. As soon as the duct was big enough, they crawled through and set up a small workshop in the space above the cell blocks. Now, there is some controversy to this, as this is where Alan West was working. Due to his good behaviour, he was sort of like the maintenance man who worked up there. It was whilst working here that West spotted a duct on the ceiling. All they had to do was cut around the entire duct and push the whole thing out, which would enable them access to the roof. Well, this area was in plain sight of a guard station, and this information was only released in the 1990s, but part of the area where West was working was covered by blankets. West had convinced guards that whilst he cleaned and painted the top of the cell block, that he needed blankets to prevent damaging the walls. The blankets were there for a few months, right up until their escape, and when police went up there to investigate, they removed the blankets and found all kinds of tools and materials that the men had acquired in this makeshift workshop. The prisoners used this space to make life jackets and 2 rubber rafts made from raincoats, and a small instrument to inflate the raft. All this work was done at night, and to disguise their absence from guards, they made realistic dummy heads with a papier-mâché type mixture made from soap and toilet rolls. Since Clarence Anglin worked in the barbershop, he collected hair clippings which made the perfect replicas. They positioned the heads on their pillows, bulking the bed out with clothes and towels, so guards didn't expect anything during their night watch routines. With all the preparation complete and the plan ready, the men made their escape. Unfortunately for West though, things didn't go as planned. He was unable to crawl through the vent hole he had cut. Apparently he never escaped through the vent hole until that night and had miscalculated the size. The other 3 had to leave without him, and as they were climbing up to the roof, one of them dropped a metal bar. Another prison inmate who had a good feeling that the men were scheduled to escape that night said the sound of the bar falling and hitting the pipes echoed through the entire prison. He's confident the guards on duty must have heard it, but surprisingly didn't pay any attention to it. The men continued their journey up to their makeshift workshop, then through the ceiling vent up onto the roof, where they slid down a kitchen vent pipe cut through 2 12-foot barbed wire perimeter fences, inflated their raft, and paddled themselves either to freedom or to their deaths. By this time, West had eventually made it through the vent hole, but it was too late. The other 3 were already off the island and making their escape. A few hours later, during the morning routine of every inmate standing at their cell bars, The Angling brothers and Frank didn't move a muscle. After officers tried to wake them, their dummy heads rolled on the floor and the prison workers' hearts dropped. The whistles and sirens blasted through the prison and the massive search began. West was questioned, but he didn't give much information. Not long after, remnants of the raincoat raft and wooden paddles were discovered, along with a plastic bag containing names and addresses of the Anglins' friends and family, but no trace of the men was found. The FBI concluded that although it was possible for the inmates to have reached Angel Island, it was thought unlikely, and although the case was kept open for 17 years, it was finally closed, with the official findings stating the prisoners most likely drowned in the cold water. But more people seem to believe they escaped than drowned. Many Alcatraz historians say the men planned this out incredibly well and would not have underestimated the water. And both the Anglin brothers were very good swimmers who knew how to calculate and handle strong tides, so this adds some weight to the theory they did make it. Another important piece of information was brought up sometime after their escape. Apparently, a worker on Alcatraz said that he saw a stationary boat out in the water at around 1 AM on the night of the escape. This area was a no-go zone for boats and it should not have been there. Not long after, it fired up its engine and left, leading to the thought that this was part of the men's escape plan. Maybe they climbed aboard the boat and disappeared. But the information to back up that they did make it doesn't end here. For 15 years, the families of the men were watched closely by the FBI. They were interviewed and their mail was monitored, and the Anglin family did receive some unexplained postcards that no one could trace. Now, it could have been people messing around, but they would also receive letters on special occasions, and John and Clarence's mother received flowers every Mother's Day up until her death from an unknown person. At her funeral, the FBI were there, thinking if the two brothers were alive, they would likely show up. Apparently, two strange, tall-looking women with heavy makeup turned up at the funeral, but before FBI agents could talk with them, they had left. Over the years, many people have reported seeing the men, and a lot of photos have been handed into the FBI. The most compelling was a photograph of two men allegedly taken in 1975 near the farm in Rio de Janeiro where the Anglin brothers were apparently living at the time. The photo has been analysed by forensics and it was thought that it could very well have been John and Clarence. The most recent evidence was released in 2015 by two of the Anglins' nephews, claiming that their uncles did survive the escape and were living in Brazil. But with all the mention of the brothers, it seems there is no mention of Frank Morris, because despite a few alleged sightings of him over the years, it's thought maybe he did not make it, although his body was never found. The escape has been the subject of many films, TV programs, books and debates over the years, and whatever the men's fate, everything surrounding the case is truly fascinating. So what do you think? Did John, Clarence and Frank pull off one of the biggest escapes in history? So that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed and I'll see you again in the next one.